Okay, so here we are with our Phantom P3 all set up with the template after I sorted out the full span ailerons. So here's the basic mode with the radio on, and we have our ailerons working, rudder, elevator. That's the basic mode when the radio is turned on, but nothing else is working. None of the switches, none of the flight modes. So basically I use logic switches to turn all of my flight modes on and off depending on how I want to fly. Now this is essentially maybe a F5K. It's full. It's got 6 servos and a motor, and everything is powered off. So to fly this plane, we would normally have brakes.
Air brake on, flaps up.
We would have flight modes.
Flight mode on, flight mode cruise.
And we'd have a motor.
Motor on.
And now we're ready to fly. In this flying mode, we have our
down.
brakes, and I'm using Crow, so I have my ailerons up and my flaps come down.
Flaps up.
And when my flaps are down, I can adjust my my braking, my elevator compensation with T5.
Air brake elevator 31%.
So I've made it more aggressive.
Air brake elevator 30%.
And made it less aggressive, and I can do that while flying.
Flaps up.
We have differential, which I can adjust on T6.
Aileron differential 5%. Aileron differential 10%. Aileron differential 15%.
So my left side has come up 15%.
Aileron differential 10%. Aileron differential 5%. Aileron differential 0%.
And we have a motor. So that's our simple modes, and with elevator usage I have got snap flaps, so that'll help with the pitch. So that's the essential system. If I wanted to, I could add my rates.
Slope soarer mode, aileron high.
And so
high.
Rates are basically, I would normally use rates for slope soaring, and I have got settings on the switch here.
Aileron medium, aileron low, aileron medium, aileron
So
high.
there we are, high,
Aileron
medium,
aileron low,
and low.
aileron high.
And I also have
Elevator medium, elevator low, elevator high.
I have the rates for the ailerons and rates for the elevators. So that's all nice. We also have our flight modes.
Flight mode speed.
So my speed mode, which is really based on DLG flying, is with some camber, some reflex.
Flight mode cruise.
Cruise is with level surfaces,
Flight mode float.
and float with some camber. And for each mode there's some elevator compensation. And in float mode I can increase the amount of
Thermal camber -15.
thermal camber, and that just enables me to tune my thermal mode while flying.
Thermal camber 0.
And of course we've got Expo.
Expo 30%. Expo 0%.
So that is most of the setup that I use. I guess the only other thing would be my telemetry screen. So when I run the motor, it starts to count down the use of the battery, and I can activate a flight timer. Which is running now, and at the same time it turns the logging on. And if I quit that,
Logging off.
it tells me that the log's off and resets the flight timer. Awesome. Let's just have a close look at the aileron and flap when we are looking at the rates. So the issue for me was to get the rates and the expo and the differential working on the flaps in sync with the ailerons, and the ailerons move less than the flaps. So if I have my braking mode, you can see that the flaps move an extreme amount compared to the ailerons. But when flying, we want them to sort of track together. And normally I run the flaps tracking the ailerons slightly behind the aileron. And actually, I probably got them running a bit close, and I could reduce the amount of movement. But for the purposes of this, you can see that maximum up aileron, the maximum up of the flap is slightly less, and same when it goes down. I've got no differential applied to this wing at the moment, but I'm in high rates, and if I pull it fully down, you can see that if I go to medium rates and low rates, both the aileron and the flaps are moving, so everything's working beautifully. And the way I achieved it was with variables. So I have, where are they? Okay, so I have my variable aileron rates and my variable for flaps. And if we go in and have a look, we can see that with the switch up, I've got 100% full rates. Switch in the middle, I've got 80% rates, and switch down, I've got 60% rates. And that works for the ailerons, and that's all very simple. And if we look at the flap rates, you can see that the value of the flap rate is taking the value of the aileron rates, and then I've created this action which is always on, and it creates a percentage output of 40%. So basically the rates for the flaps are 40% behind the ailerons, and that's essentially how it works. And I actually have a flap down here, a variable for the flap, and that's the setting that I have for the flaps, which is 40%. So as we move, the ailerons are 100%, the flaps are moving 40%, and that's how it works. And basically, if we look at our mixer for the flaps, we can see it in action. So my flap is basically an aileron, and it's got expo, it's got rates, it's calling, and actually the weight of the wing is now calling that 40%, that variable for the flap, and our rates are on, and it's calling the flap rates, which are running at 40% of the ailerons. So it all turned out to be quite easy. The differential is called from channel 27, which is the same as my aileron, and my output is the flaps. gorgeous.